The great station floated in the darkness of space like a metal god. It was old. Older than human cities. Older than human nations. The species who built it had died long ago, but their creation remained. Now it served as the heart of the Galactic Council, where 12 ancient species decided the fate of the galaxy. Ambassador Hannah stood at the window of her small quarters and looked at the station growing larger as her ship approached. She was 53 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and calm eyes that had seen too much. Behind her, Lieutenant Jiho checked his uniform for the 100th time. "They will not welcome us," Hannah said quietly. "You understand this?" Jiho was young. Only 20. He still believed in things. "We earned our seat, Ambassador. 30 years of diplomacy. 30 years of proving ourselves." Anna turned to look at him. She did not smile. "We earned a provisional seat. A chair at the edge of the table. They will let us speak. Whether they will listen is another matter." The docking was smooth. The doors opened, and humanity stepped onto the station called Sovereignty for the first time as official. Members of the galactic community, no. One greeted them. The hallway was empty. Clean, silent. Hannah walked forward without hesitation. She had expected this. Jiho followed, his jaw tight. They found their way to the great chamber where the council met. It was a massive room, shaped like a circle, with 12 tall seats arranged around a central platform. Each seat belonged to one of the elder species. Some of these species had traveled between stars. When humans were still learning to make fire, Hannah took her place at the small desk near the edge. Not a tall seat. Not a position of honor. Just a desk. A place for observers. For children, the counselors entered one by one. They were strange and beautiful and terrible. Counselor Thren of the Veth Dominion was tall and thin, with skin like blue glass and eyes that held no warmth. Counselor Merrick's of the Solari Collective floated rather than walked, her body made of light and energy. And at the highest seat sat High Arbiter Velos, ancient beyond measure, his form wrapped in robes that seemed to move on their own. Velos looked at Hannah the way a mountain looks at an insect. "The human delegation may speak," he said. His voice was bored. Hannah stood. She bowed respectfully. Then she spoke. She spoke of trade, of sharing knowledge, of building bridges between Earth and the Council worlds. She spoke of humanity's wish to contribute, to learn, to grow alongside their galactic neighbors. Her voice was steady. Her words were clear. She asked for nothing unreasonable. Counselor Thren interrupted her before she could finish. "Why should we listen to this?" he asked, not looking at Hannah, but at the other counselors. "They are children. Their species still remembers war, still carries weapons, still feels." He made a sound of disgust. "Emotions." Some of the counselors laughed softly. Hannah did not react. She waited until the laughter stopped. Then she continued her speech, exactly where she had been interrupted. She finished every word she had planned to say. When she was done, she bowed again and sat down. Jiho's hands were shaking under the desk. He wanted to stand up and shout. He wanted to tell them that humans had value, that they deserved respect. But Hannah placed her hand on his arm and shook her head slightly. "Not yet. Not like this." The council moved on to other matters. Hannah's proposals were not discussed. They were not rejected. They were simply ignored, as if she had never spoken at all. That evening, Hannah stood alone at a viewing port in the station's outer ring. The stars stretched endlessly before her. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there, Admiral Taiho waited with the fleet. Ready for her report? She heard footsteps behind her. Slow, heavy, ancient. Elder Corbax was the oldest member of the council. Though he no longer held a voting seat, he was a historian, a keeper of records. His body was bent with age, and his eyes were like deep wells filled with memory. He stood beside her and looked at the stars. "I have watched many young species come before this council," he said. His voice was like dry leaves. "Most of them demand. Most of them shout. They want respect, so they try to take it. They want power, so they threaten. They want recognition, so they boast. Hannah said nothing. You do none of these things, Korvax continued. You simply wait. You speak your piece and sit down. He turned to look at her with those deep, ancient eyes. I wonder what you were waiting for. Hannah was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was a sad smile, a patient smile. We are waiting for them to see us, she said. Korvax studied her face. And if they never do? Hannah looked back at the stars. Then we will have our answer. Korvax made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sigh. He turned and walked away, his footsteps fading into silence. Hannah remained at the window. She opened a communication channel to Admiral Taiho. His face appeared on her personal screen, weathered and strong. How bad? He asked. They did not even let me finish speaking, she said. Taiho closed his eyes. When he opened them, there was something cold in them. Something that had seen too many battles. We can leave. Right now. We do not need them. No, Hannah said softly. Not yet. We have waited 30 years, Taiho. We can wait longer, much longer. Hannah looked at the stars. At the great station, at the galaxy that did not want them. Until they understand what they are losing, she said. Until they see what we really are. Taiho nodded slowly. Then we wait. The channel closed. Hannah stood alone in the darkness, a single human surrounded by species who thought she was nothing. But she was not angry. She was not afraid. She was patient, and patience, as the Council would one day learn, was the most dangerous thing of all. 5 years passed. 5 years of silence. 5 years of waiting, but humanity did not simply wait. They worked. When a plague struck the outer colonies of the Veth Dominion, human doctors were the first to offer help. When a Solari transport ship became trapped in an asteroid field, human rescue teams were the first to respond. When ancient power stations failed on forgotten worlds, human engineers were the first to arrive with tools and knowledge. They asked for nothing in return. Only acknowledgement. Only recognition. Only to be seen. They received none of it. Dr. Minji stood in the medical center on the Veth homeworld and watched her team work. They had been here for 6 months. 6 months of 18-hour days. 6 months of watching people die and fighting to save more. The Veth were proud and cold, but their children still cried when they were sick. Their parents still held them and prayed to gods that Minji did not know. The plague was unlike anything in human records. It attacked the nervous system, slowly shutting down the body from the inside. Veth doctors had tried everything. Nothing worked. Thousands died every week. Minji did not sleep. She studied samples. She ran tests. She failed again and again. But she did not stop. Humans did not stop. On the 203rd day, she found the answer. It was a protein. A tiny thing, invisible to the eye. But it was the key. Minji developed a treatment. She tested it. It worked. Within 3 weeks, the death rate dropped to nearly 0. She saved millions of lives. The Veth Medical Council called a meeting to acknowledge her work. Minji stood before them, exhausted but proud. She expected thanks, perhaps even respect. The head physician looked at her with cold blue eyes. We acknowledge the assistance of the human team, he said. However, it should be noted that Veth researchers were close to the same discovery. The humans simply arrived at the conclusion marginally faster. Another physician spoke. We would have solved this ourselves, eventually. There was no thank you. No recognition of the human lives spent in their hospitals. No mention of the months Minji had sacrificed. Minji bowed politely. She said nothing. She gathered her team and left the planet. On the transport home, one of her young doctors began to cry. Why do we help them? She asked. They do not care. They will never care. No. Minji looked out the window at the stars. Because we are human, she said quietly, and this is what we do. Across the galaxy, Captain Wujin received a distress call. A Solari colony ship had lost power near an asteroid field. 3,000 civilians were aboard. Without help, They would drift into the rocks and be destroyed. Wujin turned his ship, the Eternal Dawn, and pushed the engines to maximum. They arrived to find chaos. The colony ship was already taking damage. Asteroids struck its hull. Fires burned in its lower decks. The Solari were screaming on all frequencies. Wujin did not hesitate. He ordered his crew to begin evacuation. For 6 hours they worked. Shuttle after shuttle flew between the ships. Human crew members walked through burning corridors to carry Solari children to safety. They breathed smoke. They felt the heat. They did not stop. 2 of them did not come back. Lieutenant Yuna was 24 years old. She died when a corridor collapsed on top of her. She had been carrying a Solari infant in her arms. The infant survived. Yuna did not. Ensign Doyan was 22. He died when his shuttle was struck by an asteroid. He had 17 Solari refugees aboard. He managed to dock the shuttle before the damage took him. All 17 survived. Doyan did not. 3,000 Solari were saved. 2 humans were lost. Wujin stood on the bridge of his ship after it was over. He looked at the empty seats. He thought about letters he would have to write, families he would have to face. The Solari Council sent a message 3 days later. It was short. Gratitude is acknowledged. Nothing more. No names. No mention of Yuna or Doyan. Just 3 words, cold and formal. As if humans had delivered cargo instead of giving their lives. Wujin deleted the message. He did not respond. At the next Galactic Council session, Hannah stood once again at her small desk. She had been doing this for 5 years, asking for the same things. Receiving the same silence. Humanity requests full membership in the Galactic Council, she said. Her voice was calm, patient. We request voting rights and equal standing with our fellow species. Hi, Arbiter, Velos sighed. It was the sigh of someone asked to solve a problem they did not care about. The Council will consider your request in due time, he said. Now on to the matter of trade route adjustments. The session moved on. Hannah sat down. Jiho, now a commander, sat beside her. His eyes were hard. It will never say yes, he whispered. Hannah did not answer. She did not need to. They both knew the truth. On Earth, protests had begun. Families who had lost children to council service stood outside government buildings. Their signs were simple. Bring our people home. Stop the giving. Let them save themselves. Admiral Taiho watched the news from his office. His desk was covered with reports, deaths, sacrifices, services rendered. And in return, nothing. Nothing at all. His communication screen lit up. Hannah's face appeared. How much longer do we keep giving? He asked. Hannah was quiet for a long time. Her eyes were tired. 5 years of polite smiles and empty bows had left marks on her face. Till they understand what they are losing, she said finally. And if they never understand? Hannah looked at him. For the first time, he saw something new in her eyes. Not anger, not sadness. Something colder. Something quieter. Then they will understand what it means to lose it, she said. Taiho nodded slowly. He understood the giving would continue. For now, but nothing lasted forever. Not patience. Not kindness. Not even hope. And somewhere in the great silence of space, the clock was ticking. The Corvan Empire attacked without warning. They came from beyond council space, where no treaties held and no laws applied. Their ships were black and fast and cruel. They struck 3 border worlds in a single night. Cities burned. Millions died. The message was clear. The council was weak, and the Corvans knew it. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. For the first time in centuries, there was fear in the Great Chamber. Councillor Threen spoke first. We must defend our territory, he said. But his voice shook. The Veth Dominion had a strong fleet, but they were far from the border. It would take weeks for them to arrive. Councillor Merrick spoke next. The Solari Collective cannot spare ships. Our colonies are vulnerable. We must protect our own people first. One by one, The elder species made their excuses. Their fleets were too far. Their resources were stretched thin. Their people would not accept the casualties. High Arbiter. Velos watched them argue. When the shouting stopped, he turned his ancient eyes to the small desk at the edge of the chamber. To the human ambassador who had been watching in silence, perhaps Velos said slowly, "This is an opportunity for our newest members to prove their value." Every eye in the chamber turned to Hannah. She understood immediately. They wanted human soldiers to die so that Council soldiers would not have to. They wanted human ships to burn so that Council ships could remain safe. They were offering nothing in return except vague promises and empty words. Hannah looked at Velos. "And if we do this, if we defend your borders with our blood?" Velos spread his hands in a gesture that was supposed to look generous. "Then the Council will strongly consider your application for full membership." Strongly consider. Not guarantee. Not promise. Just consider. Hannah should have said no. She knew this. But she also knew that somewhere on those border worlds, innocent people were dying. People who had never hurt anyone. Children who would never grow up. And humanity had the power to save them. She closed her eyes. She thought of Yuna and Doyun. She thought of all the humans who had given everything and received nothing. Then she thought of the children on those burning worlds. "We will go," she said. Admiral Taiho received the orders 3 hours later. He stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the fleet gathered around him. Thousands of ships. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers. The pride of humanity. They were about to sail into a war that was not theirs. To die for people who did not care if they lived. "Admiral," his first officer said, "the crews are asking questions. They want to know why." Taiho was silent for a long moment. Then he opened a channel to every ship in the fleet. "I will not lie to you," he said. "The Council does not respect us. They do not see us as equals. They are using us to protect themselves while they hide behind their borders." He paused. "But on those worlds, there are innocent people. Mothers, fathers, children. They did not choose this war. They do not deserve to die." He looked at the stars. "We are human. We do not abandon the helpless, even when the powerful abandon us. That is who we are. That is why we go." The fleet moved. The Battle of Three Worlds lasted 23 days. Captain Wujin led the first wave. His ship, the Eternal Dawn, was among the first to engage the Korvan fleet. The enemy was fierce. Their weapons were powerful. Their tactics were ruthless, but humans did not retreat. Day after day, they fought. Night after night, they held the line. Ships burned around them. Friends died beside them, but they did not stop. Commander Jiho coordinated communications between the scattered human forces. He went 3 days without sleep. His voice grew hoarse. His hands shook, but he kept working. He kept fighting. On the 19th day, a Korvan assault broke through the human lines. They headed straight for a refugee transport carrying 50,000 civilians. Wujin ordered the Eternal Dawn to intercept. The battle was short. The Eternal Dawn was badly damaged. Wujin took a piece of shrapnel to his leg. But the transport escaped. 50,000 people lived because one captain refused to let them die. When the Korvans finally retreated on the 23rd day, the human fleet had won. 3 worlds were saved. Millions of lives were protected. But the cost was terrible. 17,000 human soldiers were dead. 42 ships were destroyed. Countless more were damaged beyond repair. Families on Earth received messages that began with words no one wanted to read. The survivors limped back to Council space. They expected gratitude, recognition, at the very least, acknowledgement of what they had sacrificed. The Council met 3 days after the victory. Hannah sat in her usual place, exhausted and grieving. She waited for Velos to speak about the battle, to thank humanity, to finally see them. Velos cleared his throat. Now, regarding the trade tariff adjustments for the Outer Rim colonies, Hannah stood. High Arbiter. The matter of the 3 worlds? Velos waved his hand. That matter is concluded. The border is secure. We may proceed. 17,000 humans died, Hannah said. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. They died defending Council territory, defending Council citizens. Councillor Threen made a sound that might have been a laugh. He leaned toward Councillor Merrick's and spoke in a voice that was just loud enough to hear. At least the humans are good for something, dying. Merrick said nothing. Some of the other councillors smiled. Hannah stood frozen. Behind her, Jiho rose from his seat. His face was pale. His eyes were empty. He did not shout. He did not strike. He simply looked at Thrain with an expression that was worse than anger. It was recognition. He finally saw them for what they were. Then he turned and walked out of the chamber without a word. That night, Hannah sat alone in her quarters. She stared at the wall. She thought about 35 years of patience, 35 years of hope, 35 years of believing that if humanity just kept giving, kept sacrificing, kept proving their worth, the Council would eventually see them. They would never see them. She understood that now. She opened a communication channel to Admiral Taiho. His face appeared on the screen. He looked old, tired, broken. She spoke only 2 words. It's time. Taiho closed his eyes. When he opened them, there was something new there. Not anger. Not sadness. Something colder. Something final. I will give the orders, he said. The channel closed, and in the great silence of space, something shifted. Something ended. Humanity was done. The council chamber was full. Every seat was taken. Every species was represented. It was a routine session. It's like hundreds before it, but something was wrong. High Arbiter Velos looked at the small desk near the edge of the chamber. It was empty. The human delegation was not there. Where are the humans? He asked. His voice carried mild annoyance, nothing more. Delays were inconvenient. Humans were inconvenient. An aide hurried forward. We have sent messages, High Arbiter. There has been no response. Velos frowned. Send another message. Remind them that attendance is required. An hour passed. Then 2, the desk remained empty. Reports began arriving from across council space. Strange reports. Troubling reports. On the Veth homeworld, human medical teams were packing their equipment. Dr. Minji stood in the hospital where she had saved millions of lives. She supervised the loading of supplies onto transport ships. Veth officials demanded explanations. She gave none. We cannot leave, a Veth administrator said. We have patients. Ongoing treatments. Amenge looked at him. Her face was calm. Peaceful, almost. Your doctors are capable. They nearly discovered the cure themselves. Eventually, she turned back to her work. You will manage. The transports lifted off. The humans were gone. On a Solari colony, human engineers set down their tools in the middle of a repair project. The station's power grid was half finished. Without completion, the colony would face blackouts for months. You must finish, the colony administrator pleaded. We paid for this work. The lead engineer, a quiet man named Sung Ho, shook his head. The payment was received. The contract is terminated. We are returning home. But why? What have we done? Sung Ho looked at him for a long moment. Then he simply walked away without answering. The humans boarded their ships and left. They took nothing that was not theirs. They damaged nothing. They simply stopped working and went home. In conflict zones across the galaxy, human peacekeepers received new orders. They were to withdraw immediately. Not to engage. Not to explain. Just to leave. On a small moon where 2 species had been fighting for generations, a human commander named Youngji gathered her troops. The local leaders came running. You cannot abandon us, one said. Without you, the fighting will begin again. Youngji looked at him. For 15 years, we have stood between your people and your enemies. For 15 years, we have bled to keep your peace. How many of my soldiers have you thanked? How many of our dead have you mourned? The leader had no answer. Youngji nodded. That is what I thought. She turned to her troops. Move out. They marched to their ships and flew away. Behind them, the fragile peace began to crack. The reports flooded into the council chamber. Everywhere, humans were leaving. Medical teams, engineers, peacekeepers, traders, diplomats, all of them. It's moving in perfect coordination, withdrawing from council space. Counselor Merrick's grew concerned. She tried to contact the Solari colony that humans had saved years ago. The colony where 2 humans had died, rescuing 3,000 civilians. The colony administrator answered. His voice was shaken. The human embassy closed last night, he said. They left without warning. No speeches. No demands. They just packed their things and went. Did they leave any message? Merrick asked. Only one thing. The administrator paused. They left the memorial stones. The ones for the 2 crew members who died saving our people. They left them behind. Merrick felt something cold move through her. She did not understand why that detail troubled her so much, but it did. Counselor Threen watched the chaos with a sneer on his face. Let them go, he said loudly. This is a tantrum, a child's protest. They will come crawling back within a month, begging for readmission. No one agreed with him, but no one argued either. Elder Korvac sat in his corner of the chamber and watched. He said nothing, but his ancient eyes were troubled. He returned to his quarters and accessed the historical archives. He searched for records of other young species who had stood before the council. Species who had asked for recognition. Species who had been denied. He found 2 patterns. The first pattern was common. Young species who shouted, who demanded, who threatened. These species burned bright and burned out. They made noise until they could no longer be ignored. Then the council crushed them or absorbed them. Easy, predictable. The second pattern was rare, very rare. Young species who did not shout, who waited, who gave and gave and gave until they had nothing left to give. These species did not burn out. They simply turned away. And when they turned away, they never looked back. Korvac found 3 examples in the archives. 3 species who had left council space in silence. None of them had ever returned. And the regions they had once served had never fully recovered. He closed the archives. His hands were trembling. At the border of council space, Admiral Taiho stood on the bridge of his flagship. Behind him, the entire human fleet had gathered. Thousands of ships. Hundreds of thousands of people. All of them facing the same direction. Home, Ambassador Hannah stood beside him. She held a recording device. Are you sure? Taiho asked. Hannah nodded. They need to hear it. Not anger. Not threats. Just the truth. She activated the device. Her message was broadcast on all council frequencies. Every station, every ship, every world. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. For 35 years, humanity asked only to be seen. We came to you with open hands. We offered our knowledge, our labor, our blood. We asked for nothing except acknowledgement of our worth. You gave us silence. You gave us contempt. You took our gifts and offered nothing in return. She paused. We are not angry. We are not punishing you. We simply have no more to give. You taught us that our worth was nothing to you, so we will find worth elsewhere. Among ourselves. Another pause. Longer this time, you wanted us to beg, to shout, to prove we were as small as you believed. We will not give you that satisfaction. Instead, we will simply do what you always expected. We will disappear. We will leave you in peace, and we will not return. Her voice softened. Goodbye. The transmission ended. The human fleet began to move. Every ship turned as one, a perfect formation, facing away from council space. The engines powered up. The stars blurred, and then they were gone. On sovereignty, the council chamber was silent. High Arbiter Velos sat frozen in his seat. Counselor Threen's sneer had faded. Even the aides had stopped moving. Elder Korvac broke the silence. His voice was old, tired, filled with something that might have been grief. They are not coming back, he said. No one answered. There was nothing to say. The stars outside the viewing port seemed colder now, darker. The galaxy suddenly felt very empty. And in that terrible silence, the council finally began to understand. 1 year passed. 1 year of silence. 1 year of absence. Council space was falling apart. On the Veth homeworld, the plague had returned. It was a new strain, different from the one Dr. Minji had cured. Veth doctors worked desperately, but they could not find the answer. They searched for the human research files, hoping to find clues. But the files were gone. The humans had taken everything with them. Thousands died in the first month. Tens of thousands in the second. By the 6th month, entire cities were under quarantine. The hospitals overflowed. The morgues could not keep up. The Veth government sent messages to human space. Desperate messages. Begging for help. The messages went unanswered. On Solari colonies, the power grids that humans had maintained began to fail. Without human engineers, the old systems could not be repaired. Blackouts spread from world to world. Factories shut down. Food production collapsed. The Solari tried to hire engineers from other council species. But those engineers did not know human technology. They made mistakes. Things got worse. On a dozen border worlds, the peace that human soldiers had maintained shattered like glass. Old enemies remembered old grudges. Wars erupted. Refugees fled. The council tried to send peacekeepers, but no species wanted to sacrifice their own soldiers. The Corvins watched all of this. With hungry eyes, they massed their fleets at the border once again. This time, there were no humans to stop them. This time, the council stood alone. High Arbiter Velos called an emergency session. The chamber was full, but the mood was different now. No more arrogance. No more contempt, only fear. We must reach out to the humans, Velos said. The words seemed to pain him. We must ask for their help. Counselor Threen stood. His face was pale. The sneer was gone. They will not answer. I have tried. We have all tried. They do not respond. Then we must send a delegation, Velos said. In person? We must go to their border and speak to them directly. Counselor Merrick's was chosen to lead the mission. She had never been cruel to humans. She had never laughed at them. But she had never helped them either. She had simply stood by and watched. Perhaps that was worse. The delegation traveled to the edge of human space. It was a long journey, and the silence was terrible. Where there had once been human ships, human stations, human presence, there was now nothing. Empty space. Cold stars. They reached the border and waited. After 3 days, a single human patrol ship approached. It was small, unremarkable, but it was the first human vessel the council had seen in a year. Commander Jeho's face appeared on the screen. He was older now, harder. The hopeful young officer who had once believed in the council was gone. In his place was a man who had learned a terrible lesson. Mark spoke carefully, respectfully. Commander, the Galactic Council requests an audience with human leadership. We come with a formal proposal. Jeho's expression did not change. What proposal? Merrick's took a deep breath. The council offers full membership to humanity. Voting rights. Equal standing. Everything you ever asked for. She paused. We also request humanitarian assistance with the medical crisis on Veth. Military support against the Corvin threat. Technological aid for our failing infrastructure. She waited. Surely this would be enough. Surely the humans would accept. Jeho was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was flat, empty. You offer us everything we asked for. After 35 years of service, after thousands of our people died for you, after we begged and waited and gave everything we had, he shook his head slowly. You offer it now, when you need us, when you have no other choice. Merrick's felt something cold settle in her chest. Commander, please understand. The Council recognizes its mistakes. We are prepared to make amends.
Akko looked at her.
Through her. Pastor, we are not angry, he said. We are not punishing you. We simply moved on. You taught us that our worth was nothing to you. So we found worth in ourselves. In our own people. In our own worlds. He paused. We do not need your recognition anymore. We do not want it. Merrick's felt desperate now. Commander, millions will die. The Corvins will destroy everything. You cannot simply abandon the galaxy. Jiho's expression finally changed. Just slightly. A flicker of something. Sadness, perhaps. You abandoned us first, he said quietly. You just did not notice. The transmission ended. The patrol ship turned and flew away. The delegation was left floating in empty space, surrounded by stars that no longer seemed to shine. On Earth, Admiral Taiho walked through a garden in Seoul. It was spring. Cherry blossoms fell like pink snow. Children laughed and played nearby. Hannah walked beside him. Her hair was fully gray now, but her eyes were peaceful. They sent a delegation, Taiho said. Jiho turned them away. Hannah nodded. I know. Do you regret it? Hannah looked at the cherry blossoms. At the children. At the blue sky above. They wanted us to beg, she said. To shout, to prove we were as small as they believed. They wanted to see us suffer so they could feel generous when they finally helped. She shook her head, but we did not give them that. We simply walked away, and that terrified them more than any war ever could. Taiho was quiet for a moment. The Corvins will attack them. Many will die. Yes, Hannah said. And perhaps someday, when the crisis is over, they will remember what it felt like to be ignored, to be dismissed, to give everything and receive nothing. She looked at him. Perhaps then they will understand. On sovereignty, Elder Korvac sat alone in the empty council chamber. The other counselors had gone to deal with their crises, but Korvac's remained. He had nowhere else to be. He accessed the cultural database that humans had left behind, one small archive overlooked during the withdrawal. He searched through it, looking for understanding. Looking for answers, he found a human saying. Simple words from an old philosopher. The opposite of love is not hate. It is indifference. Korvac sat with those words for a long time. He thought about the humans, about their patience, about their giving, about the moment when they had finally stopped. They had not left in anger. They had not screamed or fought or threatened. They had simply looked at the council, seen what it truly was, and stopped caring, and that was the deepest wound of all. He spoke to the empty room. His voice echoed in the silence. We were so busy looking down at them, so certain of our superiority, so confident that they needed us more than we needed them. He closed his eyes. We never noticed when they stopped looking up. The stars outside the viewing ports continued to shine. The galaxy continued to turn. But something was missing now. Something that could never be replaced. The council had finally learned the lesson that humanity had known all along. Some gifts, once refused, can never be given again. Some doors once closed can never be opened, and some silences last forever.